I had not a single female patient who had not been sexually abused as a child.
Say that again.
I didn't have a single female patient, hundreds of them, in 12 years who had not been sexually abused, and all the men had been severely abused, some of them sexually, some of them in other ways. Now, fair enough, that was my observation. Then you have the large-scale studies that we've already referred to, the adverse childhood experiences studies that show the same thing, that more of those experiences that you have, the greater your risk of addiction later on in life. By the way, also the greater the risk of autoimmune disease and mental health conditions and so on, but specifically addictions. So that by the time a male child has the 6 of these, sexual, physical, emotional abuse, etc., his risk of becoming an injection-using drug addict is 4,600% greater than that of somebody else. A 46-fold increase. Now, why? 2 reasons. First of all, as we said, the brain develops under the impact of the environment, and the condition and the circuits in the brain that are prone for addiction get affected by that early trauma, number 1. Number 2, when I ask people not what's wrong with their addiction, but what's right about it. So if you guys have addictions, I'm not going to ask you what or when.
We've talked about it.
But I've had behavior addictions. I've never had a substance one. But I'm not going to ask you what your addictions was. I'm just going to ask you one simple question. If you guys are both willing to answer it, know what was wrong with it? What was right about it? What did it give you temporarily? Now, here's the thing. Something happened to you. So the addiction wasn't your problem. It is a symptom, yes, but it's also an attempt to solve a problem.
Correct.
The problem of pain.
Well,
or the problem of not being alive. So the question then is, my mantra here is not why the addiction, but why the pain. Why didn't you feel alive? Because something happened to you that cut you off from yourself. And that's trauma we're talking about. Something happened to you that gave you a lot of pain that you needed to numb. That's trauma. So that's the essence of addiction, is trauma. The addiction is not the primary, it's not genetic. The whole idea of addiction being genetic, which is still the mantra. It's just scientific nonsense. There's a group of genes that the more of them you have, the more prone you might be to be addicted or to have a mental health condition. At the same time, you can have those same genes and have no condition whatsoever, depending on what the environment does. So what are these genes then? In fact, you can have a gene that this has been done. Genes that under certain circumstances make you more violent.
Yes.
Under other circumstances make you less violent. So what do you think the gene is for? The gene is for sensitivity.
Yeah.
Our capacity to be affected by the environment. And the more sensitive you are, sensere is from the Latin word, sensere, to feel. The more sensitive you are, the more you feel. The more pain you feel, the more you have to run away from the pain, the more likely to be addicted. The more creative you're going to be, the more insightful you're going to be, the more intuitive you're going to be, depending on the right environment. It also means that the more pain you have, the more you have to harden yourself. By the way, this is where harden the criminal comes from. They harden themselves because of the trauma. Then you don't feel, then you have no empathy, and you become ruthless. So that sensitivity can lead you to all kinds of different outcomes depending on what happens in the environment.
This is about the roles women are forced into. The expectations, the invisible contracts they sign with the world, agreeing to take care of everyone else before themselves. And when you realize that, when you really sit with the idea that these diseases, this pain, isn't just physical but cultural, it's infuriating and heartbreaking. Mateus not just calling out the science, he's calling out the system. A system that tells women their worth is in how much they can give, how much they can carry, how much they can sacrifice, until there's nothing left. And the thing is, a lot of women don't even notice what's happening until it's too late, until their bodies literally break down. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many women in your life are walking around, quietly falling apart under the weight of it all? And how much longer can we let this go on? Because if we don't change something, if we don't stop asking women to be everything for everyone, then we're not just failing them, we're breaking them. One stress, one burden, one sleepless night at a time.
Speaking of my own life, if at any time you'd asked me why I was doing what I was doing, I was giving you one answer. But later on, with more experience, reflection, and I would say suffering, I realized that what I thought I was doing wasn't what I was doing at all. So that the levers were pulled by something that I wasn't aware of. And so when I talk about a map to ourselves, I'm talking about a map to the unconscious drives that really motivate so much of our experience whether we're talking in the realm of politics or realm of personal relationships, and the experiences that create those childhood or those unconscious dynamics. So largely, and I'm not the first one to say this, it's like we're living in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point we wake up and we realize that we've been dreaming. And this has happened a lot in my relationship, a lot of times in my political life. You wake up and you say, I've been dreaming. What I thought was reality wasn't reality. So if anything, this book is an attempt to give people a map to their reality. In the introduction, we quote David Foster Wallace, who gives this little anecdote of at a commencement address that he gave before he committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
These two fish that are swimming along, and they're accosted by an older fish who says to them, "Morning, boys, how's the water?"
Mm-hmm.
And the two fish swim on for a while, and one of them turns to the other one and says, "What the hell is water?"
Correct.
And David Foster Wallace says that these things that are so close to us and so big, we don't even see that they're there. And I think that's what you're describing here.
Mm-hmm.
That there's so many things in this culture that, like, we swim in it like fish in the water, but we don't know that we're swimming in water. We think it's just an inevitable reality.
Right.
But so many things in this culture that are considered to be normal are completely abnormal from the point of view of human needs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one more thing I want to come back to. Just as an example, you mentioned the autoimmune condition that you have, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can tell me what it is, you cannot, but here's
I have
what...
Graves' disease.
Graves' disease, okay.
Hyperactive thyroid.
Thyroid, okay. Here's what I bet. I bet that, and I'd be delighted if I was wrong, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
that all the years that you saw specialists about this condition, did anybody ask you about
No.
childhood trauma?
No.
Stresses in your
No.
life? How
No.
you feel about yourself as a human being?
Nope.
What I'm saying is that because the mind-body is inseparable, unshakable, scientifically overproven unity, all these autoimmune conditions, I know it's difficult to go there, but here's what I would say to people, and I tell what my experience is. Would you rather hear that you got this mysterious, so-called idiopathic, we haven't got a freaking clue what causes this condition, there's nothing we can do about it except to try and control the symptoms?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you rather hear that this disease that you got is not the thing with a life of its own, but actually it's a process that's happening in your body in response to your life, in response to what happened to you as a child, in response to how you treat yourself as an adult. And if you understand all that and gain some agency over it, you can actually gain some regulation over that process. Which message would you rather hear as a human being? The first guy who described multiple sclerosis, a French neurologist, Jean-Martin Charcot, in the 19th century, said that this was a stress-caused condition. William Osler, a great Canadian physician, also founding father at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, he said rheumatoid arthritis was a stress-driven condition. An American surgeon, James Paget, in 1870, talks about breast cancer as related to women's emotional states and particularly depression and so on. This is now, these giants of medicine, who are all still revered in medical history, they had no science behind their intuition. They just had their intuition and observation. Since then, in every three of those cases, whether it's breast cancer, whether it's multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis, there's been oodles of scientific research showing the relationship between stress and those conditions. And yet, most people that go to a physician, stress, trauma never comes up. Now, what I have found is that when people understand the connection between what happened to them in childhood, the traumas they endured, the stresses they generate for themselves, how does their body saying no when they don't know how to say no, either in work or in personal life, and actually they learn to set some boundaries for themselves, there's actually a change in the physiological process. Why wouldn't there be, given that mind-body are one and inseparable? So I don't find that people are that resistant to this message once they understand it. The real problem is that you can go to physicians trained like me in the Western medical tradition, and despite all the science, you never hear this information. Well, first of all, I'd be just as outraged as you are if somebody went to somebody with cancer. You got this big, whether they were dying of it, whether they were just dealing with it.
Sure.
You never say that to anybody. You don't push that information on anybody. But however, scientifically, it's only true. Like when I worked in palliative care, looking after dying people, or in family practice, I had an advantage over the specialists because as a family physician, because I saw people before they got sick. So I knew who got sick and who didn't. And I knew their family histories. And I knew their multi-generational family histories.
Tell us who gets sick.
So who gets sick? People who are prone to get chronically ill. And by the way, we have to nail that. We're not talking about causation here.
Yep.
Okay?
Sure.
There's multiple causes. But so we're talking about a contributing factor, but a reversible one.
Right.
And if you reverse it, that can have a positive impact on the condition. Put other people's emotional needs compulsively ahead of their own.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, number one. Number two, they tend to be over-identified with duty, role, and responsibility rather than the needs of the self.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. They tend to repress healthy anger. They don't know how to set a clear boundary.
I don't even know what anger is.
Yeah, healthy anger we're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
You know about throwing
unhealthy
stuff.
anger.
I throw things.
These are the people.
I rage. I don't have anger.
You heard the expression, the good die young?
Yeah.
That's what it means. These very nice people. I worry about people that are very nice. The fourth is this belief that you're responsible for other people feel and you must never disappoint anybody. Those are the four. Now, why do those traits lead to illness? It's because, again, as a neuroscientist, and having studied neuroendocrinology or psychoendocrinology, you know that the mind and the body can't be separated. And that healthy it's a boundary defense. The role of healthy anger is a boundary defense. In fact, our emotions in general, they have one fundamental function, allowing what is healthy and nourishing and supportive, the love, and keep out what is toxic and dangerous. That's the role of our emotional system. Now, I'll ask you a quick trick question. What is the role of our immune system?
It's the same.
It's exactly the same. It's to keep out what's toxic and let in what's nourishing. Let in the nutriments, the vitamins, the healthy bacteria in the gut. Keep out, destroy what is... No. In other words, the emotional system and the nervous system, the immune system have exactly the same function. And not only do they have the same function, they're part and parcel of the same apparatus. They're not even separated.
Right.
So naturally, when people repress themselves emotionally, that's going to have an impact on the immune system. How could it be otherwise? Have you ever met a one-day-old baby that represses their feelings?
No.
Okay. In other words, we're born with that capacity. So that between our entry into the world, fully embodied, fully in touch with our gut feelings, fully capable of actually communicating exactly what we're experiencing, not in words, but in gesture and tone and so on. And the time we become adults who repress ourselves, something happens. So what happens is that the child has got these two needs, the need to attach and to belong to the parents. In fact, without that need being met, the child can't even survive. This is true for all mammalian infants, but especially so for
primates.
But especially for humans, because we're the most dependent and the least mature, the most helpless for the longest period of time. So that attachment relationship is not negotiable. We have to have it. So attachment is the drive that pulls two bodies together for closeness and proximity so that one can be taken care of or take care of the other.
And that's a hormonal connection also.
It's hormonal, it's emotional, it's neurological, it's an instinctual.
Right.
Birds have it. The infant bird would not survive without it. The healthy development of that organism depends on that attachment. And the sense of smell is one of the first to develop.
Yes.
And an infant can tell the smell of the breast pad of her mother, distinguish it from other women's within a day or two.
Right.
What do we tell parents in this culture when we tell them to sleep train their babies?
Yep.
We tell them not to pick up their kids.
That's right.
No, you tell a mother baboon not to pick up their kid.
She'll tear your face off.
Exactly. You're going to find out what mother rage is all about.
That's right.
So human beings are trained to go against their own instincts.
Yes.
That there's no such thing as mother instinct. Well, you tell a mother bear that there's no such thing as mother instinct, or a mother cat, or even a mother. I used to advise this myself. They told me they had to stand in a shower.
That's right.
and put their fingers in their ears. So here's the thing with instincts. They have to be evoked by the environment. They don't automatically work. They have to be evoked by the environment. But this environment doesn't not only not evoke parenting instincts, it actually suppresses them.
Correct.
Because we're told to separate from our kids, giving them timeouts when we don't approve of their behavior. Now that gives the message to the kid. You can be yourself. You can have now one of the essential needs of children is their freedom to feel all their emotions. That's an essential developmental need of the child, all their emotions. And the infant and the young child needs to have the freedom to have all their emotions. That's an essential developmental need. You can actually ease those conditions. Like, which message would people rather hear? I'm saying that people would rather hear that second message, that because people would rather have some agency, rather than just be passive recipients of health care. Now, again, I'm not even rejecting the use of medications. I've taken them myself. And they've helped. But I think this whole idea that mental health conditions are simple diseases that are biologically based is not scientific, number one, according to the research, scientific nonsense. Secondly, even worse, they disempower people.
Yep.
I think people would rather be empowered. But we're just going to ask you about that stuff. We're talking about what it misses.
Correct.
So we're talking about the narrowness of its perspective and its ideology. And that narrowness limits its capacity to heal. And so that's all we're talking about. It's the non-separability of emotions and physiology. And so, of course, trauma. I mean, here's the thing about trauma. In the book, I talk about V, the former eventer.
Yes.
And her father.
That was fascinating.
Her father raped her. You know, and she talks about this in her own book. Can she afford to be angry with her father when this is happening? What would happen to her if she got angry?
Sure.
She'd be hurt badly because the father also physically abused her.
Sure.
So the child then who's being abused, if they even so much as evince any anger at all, they're putting us in greater danger. So it's the wisdom of the organism that actually that's protected, that represses the anger. But that same protection, that same adaptation, later on,
there's a price.
There'll be a price to be paid later on. So whether it's parents who are following the totally misdirected advice of so-called parenting experts, and in all these parenting books out there that are touted by the media, they're toxic. So many of them. This obstetrician and advocate, or of healthy birthing. And when I interviewed him, he said that ideally a woman wouldn't read any pregnancy books at all. She would just sit outside and commune with the moon. She said. So my wife and I, when we had kids, we hadn't even known that we were traumatized, let alone work out our traumas, which means that our relationship was very conflicted. My trauma would bump against hers, and of course, there'd be rancor. Our son Daniel, with whom my brilliant eldest son Daniel, with whom I wrote this book, he talks in the book about having this nightmare as a child of the floor disappearing from under his feet. What he was talking about is he never knew when the emotional atmosphere in the home would turn very tense, which for a very sensitive child is very threatening. So we loved our kids. We would have done anything for them. But just their own traumas and stresses, they couldn't help but absorbing them. And trauma doesn't necessarily mean something terrible happening. Trauma just means a wound. That's the actual meaning of the word. Kids could be wounded, not by terrible things happening, but just by the insecurities and emotional unavailability of the parents. Furthermore, I was a workaholic doctor. Now, I've talked about this before. Why was I a workaholic doctor? Because the message as a Jewish infant under the Nazis in 1944, the message that I got from the world through the anxieties and terrors of my mother is that I wasn't wanted. Now, if you're not wanted, a wonderful way to deal with it is to try and make yourself important in other people's lives so now they want you all the time, whatever tools you got.
Sure.
In my case, that was being a doctor.
Right.
So I became a workaholic doctor. Workaholism means that I'd rather be on the job than at home, that I'm fully alive and active and kind of activated when I'm working, but I'm rather listless and depressed at home, and the beeper is always going. Now, what message are my kids getting? That they're not wanted. And that's the last message I ever wanted to give them. So it doesn't take abuse.
Right.
It just takes stressed parents, especially in a society where people have become so isolated. Like parenting was never meant to be an isolated couple in a nuclear family home, you know?
I say this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, how we evolved as human beings
Yes.
was as communal creatures. So I read this book. It's totally fascinating. You know what happens when an elephant gives birth? When the elephant mother goes into labor, all the other elephant mothers stand around in a
Right.
circle.
So she's not too vulnerable.
And when the baby plops to the ground, they all stroke her with their trunks. So that birth was a communal experience. Now, same thing used to be for human beings. And so that we live so unnaturally, so that the parenting, I should say this, the stress on parenting in this society is almost unbearable. First of all, because of all the economic and political uncertainty, and then the isolation, then the erosion of community and extended family, so that parents have an almost impossible job in this culture. So it's never a question of blaming parents for anything. It's a question of just recognizing the challenges that we're facing because we've become so denatured. The corporate capitalist ethic and its consequences has become universal now, negative all across the board.
Of course.
To brain development, to personal development, and so on. Either the psychologist or the psychiatrist, I forget which one, said that she sees women now changing the baby's diapers while the baby's looking at a screen.
Absolutely. I've seen it.
No. That diaper changing isn't just a physical act. It's an act of emotional transaction. It's parent, whether it's father or mother or grandparent, doesn't matter. It's the parenting figure and the infant interacting over making the child comfortable.
Correct.
All right, so Dr. Gabor Mate, yeah? He's one of those voices that gets right under your skin in a good way. Like the kind of person who says something that flips your perspective, and suddenly you're sitting there thinking, whoa, that's me. That's my life. He doesn't just talk about trauma like it's some clinical thing that lives in a textbook. Nah, he talks about it like it's this invisible thread that runs through everything, who you are, how you cope, why you hurt. One of the things he says that really hits hard is this idea that addiction isn't the problem. It's the solution. Yeah, that's wild, right? But it's also true. He's like, look, the more pain someone feels, the more they'll reach for something to numb it. And it doesn't matter what the something is: drugs, alcohol, food, work, shopping, scrolling endlessly on your phone. It's not about the thing itself. It's about the fact that there's this hole inside you, this ache that won't shut up. And you're just trying to quiet it, trying to survive. And when he talks about criminals, the ones society loves to label as hardened or bad, he flips that whole narrative too. He's like, these people who've done terrible things didn't just wake up one day and decide to be monsters. They're carrying trauma so deep it calcified. They had to harden themselves to survive, because if they didn't, the pain would have destroyed them. He doesn't say this to excuse their actions. He's not naive. He says it to help us understand. Because when you understand, you stop blaming. And when you stop blaming, you start seeing the human underneath all that pain. Think about that for a second. Like, really think about it. If you've been through trauma, you get it. You know what it's like to feel like you're drowning in pain and reaching for anything, to pull yourself back to the surface. And maybe what you reached for hurt you more in the long run. Maybe it wrecked your life, burned your relationships to the ground. But you weren't trying to ruin things. You were just trying to breathe. And that's the thing Dr. Mate is so good at pointing out. He's not here to tell you how broken you are. He's here to tell you that your pain makes sense. Your coping makes sense. He looks at all the ways people numb themselves, all the ways they armor up against the world, and he says, you did what you had to do to survive. And then he asks this question that lingers, this question that can haunt you in the best possible way. What would it take for you to feel safe enough to stop running from the pain? Not everyone's ready to hear that, though, because the truth is it's easier to numb out, to push it all down, than to actually sit with the thing that's been clawing at you from the inside. But the way he says it, he makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, you could face it. Like maybe you're not as broken as you think. Like maybe your story, as painful and messy and jagged as it is, doesn't have to end in the same place it started. It sticks with you, what he says, because it's not about shame. It's not about judgment. It's about understanding. It's about healing. And if you've ever carried trauma, you know how heavy it is, how much it weighs you down. And maybe hearing someone like him say it doesn't have to be that way, it doesn't fix it all, but it gives you a little hope. And honestly, sometimes hope is the thing that saves you.
So that tension between attachment and authenticity, something in you wants to say no, right?
Right.
But you don't say it
Right.
for the fear of losing the attachment. No, here's the thing, Maim. As an infant, as a young child, you have no choice in the matter. You have to choose attachment.
Right.
You don't anymore.
Right.
You can choose authenticity. You know, and so but anyway, so that's the impact, and the belief is, if I say no, people won't like me. Okay, the next question then is, who would you be if you knew how to say no? Because if you don't know how to say no, our yeses don't mean anything at all. So all I'm saying to you is, you ask me what to do, sit down once a week and do this exercise, but really be with it.
Right.
I mean, you have a very, you have a mind that flies all over the place. Sit down with a piece of paper, not with a computer, piece of paper. Do this exercise with those 6 questions, not in abstract, but where this week did I not say no? What was the impact this week of me not saying no? What was the belief this week of my not behind on not saying no?
Right.
Who would I be if I had said no? And so on. I'm telling you, if you just do that exercise, that itself will help to change you. But so when you ask me, what do people need to do? They need to commit to their healing.
There you go.
Not just to talk about it. I'm very good at talking about healing. I'm much more reticent in actually engaging in it. You know, we all are.
Sure.
So this is where we have to just actually make a commitment. You have to really ask yourself, what is important to me? So that's that. I think that's the first question. Such a